We're going to get going. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone, depending on where you are in the world. It is great to see you here today. Thank you very much for joining us. And I hope you're all well and hopefully getting back to some kind of normality with all the stuff that has been going on lately. My name is Sergio Lara Bercial, and I'm one of the minions that runs iCoachKids, a not-for-profit global movement to support youth coaches worldwide. Again, thank you for making the time to join us, and welcome to issue 10 of the iCoachKids Shares live webinars. I am absolutely over the moon today as we're going to spend the next hour or so discussing my beloved basketball. Okay, we're going to talk hoops with legendary USA basketball coach Don Showalter, a 10-time gold medal winner with the USA basketball youth teams at the under 17s and under 16s level, at the FIBA Youth World Championships, with an incredible record of 62-0. Okay, you can think about that if you want. Don, great to have you with us.
Yeah, I appreciate being here with you, Sergio. I think from our standpoint with USA Basketball, iCoachKids is very, very similar to what we emphasize with everybody too. So we have a lot of very commonalities in the game of basketball.
Fantastic. Well, the topic of today is developing game understanding for young players, particularly. How do we make sure that players can read the game effectively and make good in-game decisions? But before we get into it, please let me take you through some basic rules of engagement, as you can see on the screen. We want everyone to have the best possible experience during the webinar. So please, let me just get a few more people in. We want, like I said, we want everybody to have the best experience. So please keep your camera and microphone off so we can focus on the speakers. Please submit your questions using the chat function at the bottom of the screen or on the YouTube channel as well. We're following both. Please be respectful at all times. We don't have to agree, and I'm sure that we're going to talk about so many things today that you as a coach might do them differently, and that's perfectly fine. But let's discuss those in a nice way. And by all means, if you want to comment on social media and spread the word and bring more people into the conversation, that would be great. In terms of how the session is going to run, today's a little bit special because normally I'm just the guest, okay, and I normally introduce the speakers and they take it away. But I'm going to be guest and speaker today. This is a topic that I've been working a lot, both in my coaching, but also in terms of my academic career at the university. So I'm gonna do an introduction from a basketball point of view around developing game understanding. And then I'll pass over to Don, who's going to speak about the same topic from his perspective and what's happening at USA Basketball. And then we're gonna engage in a conversation, and we want to bring you into that conversation. So please have your questions at the ready. You can ask questions throughout the webinar. I promise you, I'll try to get to as many as possible as we go through it. And particularly at the end, really, we'll try to get to as many as possible. And let's enjoy it. Okay, so I'm going to start with my presentation. I'm just going to quickly let a few more people in. Okay, let me see. Is everybody in? Okay. And I'm going to, there we go, take you to my presentation there for a second. Okay, so as you know, the topic of the webinar is the future of basketball part 2. Last time we had Don again and Jota Cuspinera from Spain, and they gave us a fantastic tour of where the game is at, right, and where they think the game is going, and therefore what that means from a coaching point of view for all of us as coaches of young players. Now today we're going to try and take that a step further in terms of trying to get into the nitty-gritty of how we do that, you know, how we actually do that on the court and what it means for us on the court. So let's have a look. I want to start really with establishing the purpose of youth basketball. And again, by all means, this is my personal view. So I don't expect you all to agree with it, but I know Tim Brentis from the German Basketball Federation is in the room. And I stole this from Tim a couple of years ago. But really, the main purpose of youth basketball is to create basketball citizens. And very few of these players are ever going to play professional basketball, but all of them have a strong chance of becoming a basketball citizen, which is they will enjoy basketball for life, they will play for life, they will watch basketball for life, they might become coaches, administrators, they might make a fortune and then reinvest some of that into basketball. So we want to create those basketball citizens. We want to also use basketball in a positive way to support the development of the children, because what is the point of them being there if all we care about is basketball? Let's try and take it beyond that. And also we want to obviously make sure that we are laying a foundation for them to be able to participate in basketball, and for some of them to actually move on to the performance side of basketball as a young person when they start to become really capable and they want to take it a bit further. Okay, so that's kind of the first part of the philosophy really of what I'm going to talk about, because I'm actually thinking that what I'm going to propose in terms of understanding the game really contributes to all of this, to creating basketball citizens, to supporting positive development, and to laying the foundation for participation and for performance. And then another part of the philosophy is the idea that as coaches working with young people, and it doesn't matter whether they are 6 or 18, okay, it's got to be fun, okay. Size really matters in the sense that we have to break the game down into components that they can understand for where they are in terms of their development as a player. It doesn't matter whether they are again 6 or 18. If they are not at a particular developmental point in their basketball, we have to break the game down for them. We can't just assume that every 14-year-old can do the same things or every 16-year-old can do the same things. And because of that, we also talk about no child left behind, okay, that we have a responsibility to bring everybody along and to differentiate our coaching so we don't leave anybody behind. Okay, so now getting a little bit into the actual nitty-gritty of the topic today. Again, I'm not a coach that is against skills based coaching or against drills, okay? But traditionally, the way we've coached in many places is that we've focused on developing skills, okay? And in basketball, and if you open any basketball book, you have these 4 things: dribbling, passing, shooting, and footwork. Those are the chapters, okay? And that's okay. Those are the tools that we need to play the game, okay? But having those tools doesn't allow you to design a house, okay? Doesn't make you an architect, okay? Understanding the game does that, okay? We want to create players that don't only just have the tools, but actually can put them into practice in the context of the game. We want players that can build a house, okay? And we'll need to give them the tools they need to build the house, but they need to understand how to build the house. That's the analogy that I want to look at. So how do we do that, really? I've been working on this framework really for the last 5 years, first at my club, and then more recently with Basketball England. And I know some of the colleagues that work with me on this at Basketball England are in the audience tonight. So credit to them as well. But really what we try to do is say, okay, the skills are important, okay, and we have to work on the skills, but let's really make those skills useful for the game. So we have to then, first and foremost, before we go to the skills, we have to understand the game, okay? And I'm talking now, we have to understand the game as coaches. And the first thing we need to understand is the purpose of the game, okay? And in basketball, it's quite simple. So if you look at this section here, the purpose of the offense is to generate and manage advantages to create a high percentage shot, okay? We want to score, okay? So we need to generate and manage advantages to create that shot, okay? What we did was, okay, not only look at the goals, but look as well at let me go back, at the fact that we have 4 phases of the game, or 4 moments of the game, we call them, okay? So from offense, we go to the defensive transition. From that, we go to defense, and from that, we go to the offensive transition and back on the offense, okay? And in each of those, okay, what we tried to do was to identify what are those situations, those challenges that players are always having to deal with in those situations. So let me give you an example. Let me take you through them. So on the offense, if the goal of the offense is to generate and manage advantages, to create a high percentage shot, there are those 6 things that are happening all the time, regardless of what offense we run, what kind of motion or what set, or whether that's a zone against man-to-man or against the zone. These things are happening all the time. We need to be able to get open. We need to respect good spacing. We have to move the ball. We have to penetrate the defense. We have to create, once we've created an advantage, we have to be able to extend the advantage, pass it on until we get the best possible shot. And we need to be able to select the best possible shot. Okay. So, and that happens in every phase of the game, in every moment of the game. So let me move on. In the defensive transition, you're going to have the same. Now, the goal changes now. The goal is to avoid quick scores or be able to regain possession. So there are a number of things that we need to try and do to be effective in the defensive transition, okay? And for all those things, we will need skills, okay? But the main thing is to understand what we need. Again, on defense, the goal is regaining possession or forcing a low percentage shot. So what do? We disrupt the ball movement. We have to stop penetrating moves. We have to help and rotate. We have to use fouls appropriately. We have to be able to defend special situations. Those might be in terms of defending a special personnel on the other team, or defending down the shot clock, or defending when there's when you're in the team fouls, things like that, and rebounding, okay? These are things that happen all the time, regardless of what type of defense you play. You have to be able to do these things. And then you need skills, okay? But the skills are driven by what the game needs, not a skills for a skill's sake. And the same on the offensive transition, okay? So you see how these things come together, okay? And I'm going to give you, I'm just going to show you a couple of drills to show you, because the beauty of this approach is that when you then develop your practices and your drills or your activities, your games, you have to understand which principles of the game you are trying to teach with that activity. Okay, so I'm going to play you this activity quickly. I'm going to play you this video. Have a look at it. It's a 5v4. So the black team has got 5 players and the white team has only got 4. And these guys are 13 years of age. Okay, so that's me. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm saying that let's find the open shot. Let's find the open man. Okay. Okay. All right. So I don't know how well you saw that, but like I say, it's a 5-on-4 where it's an offensive. I mean, you can use that as a defensive drill as well. Okay. But mainly at this point, I'm working on the offense. And if we look at this, what am I working on? We're not working really on getting open here. Okay. Because it's a 5-on-4. Well, we are really starting to work on the spacing. Okay. We are really working on ball movement because they have to find the open player. We're not working on penetration at the moment there. Okay, although you could say that the big guy who is the only offensive player that is allowed to move is penetrating the defense by going from one side to another. And we are definitely working on extending the advantage. So because it's a 5-on-4, we've got them chasing and we want them to stay chasing. And then at some point they have to make a decision when to shoot the ball. They have to decide who's got the best possible shot in that offense. Okay, and that's what we say about teaching through the game and teaching the principles of the game, where I need to know whenever I put together an activity or a game, what is it that I'm working on. And I'm gonna give you another example. It's a similar situation, but now it's 4-on-4 now, so there's no advantage. The only advantage now comes through the fact that the defenders who are in the middle interlocking arms, they're going to have to, when I say go, come out and play defense. And it's going to be a recovery type situation, okay? So let's watch that quickly. It's a short clip. Okay, so again, in that particular game, we are now starting to work on getting open a little bit. The spacing definitely we're working on. We're working on ball movement. We're working on penetrating the defense, extending the advantage, and finding the best shot. So that's how this gets translated to the court. And don't get me wrong, we still do drills, okay? And then based on what they need, because we see them play, we'll be able to say, well, this guy here needs to work on his handles. This guy there really needs to work on his shot. And we build the skills based on what they need for the game and how each of them are doing in relation to the game, as opposed to a blanket approach to building skills. Okay, this is again, as I was saying, we then developed this with Basketball England to support the coaches working in the regional talent development centers. And basically what we did is to build this. How do we, because you cannot teach all the principles of the game at the same time, that you have to find some sort of sequence to build the house slowly, okay? And we just went, okay, well, what do we normally would like to see an under 10 player being able to do, and an under 12 and an under 14? So we created these progressive cards, if you want, where this is just an indication, okay? Because you will have lots of different 9-year-olds and different 12-year-olds. So you have to use your professional judgment here, okay, when you're coaching. But it's just an indication of what might be expected from these players and where you want to take them. So in the under 10s, for example, when we talk about principles of the game, the pucks, really, if you look at the offense, it's very simple. We really want to do a lot of one-on-one stuff. We want to give these kids the skills to play one-on-one, a little bit of getting open, and basic spacing. Okay, that will be the focus, really. And the same, you do the same with the other 4 moments of the game. Okay, that's what we're going to be working on. And obviously with that, you need to work on a number of skills, but it's really understanding what part of the game do we want to teach to a bunch of 9-year-olds. Okay, and then, for example, the same with the under 12s. So what do we want to teach the under 12s? Okay, so as before, but then we start adding more detail to the offense and the defense. So we're still one-on-one, but now we want to be able to get open in different ways. Now the spacing, we are going to start really asking them to react to the ball movement. So what happens when the ball dribbles to you, when the ball dribbles away from you, and the same for the defense, okay? But we are constantly building from the game. Okay, and that's what I wanted to present to set the scene for today. I know I went through this pretty quickly, okay, but we'll have time later on to go back to questions, and then I'm going to hand over to Don. Okay, Don, over to you.
There we go. Thanks, Sergio. I mean, what you said was exactly how we at USA Basketball pretty much want the game to be taught, how we want the game to be taught. I'm just going to throw out a lot of different things here from our standpoint, but I always, from my personal thing, I think basketball is way overcoached and undertaught. Mm-hmm. I think I said that last time I was on, but I think coaches tend to just try to overcoach the game. We try to, I know a lot of young coaches, and I did this as a young coach as well. We try to control everything on the court. We try to control where the players are going to go, or try to control and not give them the freedom to figure things out on the court themselves. And so I think that's a saying I always go back to, is that I think coaches need to be careful that they're not over coaching and under teaching the game. So how do we get to that point? Well, in your slide, I'm not going to cover a lot of things you already said, because you said it very well and had some great slides on that. But, you know, obviously we have, I'm going to try and share this screen here. We have 4 different levels that USA Basketball teaches. And I think I said this last time, but I'm just quickly going to go through how our 4 different levels really help us out as far as what we teach. First of all, the introductory level is just the basic 7, 8, 9-year-olds. We try and not put them in an age group, because like you said, different kids have different skills, not necessarily based on age. It's based on how much they have played the game of basketball and how much they've been taught and how much they've worked on it. So introductory is just they're learning how to play the game. We call this the community game effect where, hey, kids are just, maybe a dad's teaching them, hey, let's do some dribbling, let's do some shooting type of stuff. So this is really all skill work as far as when you're coaching basic 5, 6, 7-year-old kids who really maybe don't know much about the game of basketball. And then we find out all across our country, we find out, the kids that kind of want more. In other words, they're getting a little better at it. They like the community type of effect, but now they're into the foundational, which is more, all right, they're going to play for a team. It's a little more talented. They want to play for a team that gives them a little more basketball teaching. They want a little higher level of basketball. And this is usually around 11, 12, 13, 14 years old is where we get the foundational level. And we find out that the foundational level then is where we start to teach actually the concepts of the game of basketball. Like you said very well, the offense, the defensive transition, the offensive transition. And then, of course, the advanced would be more 16, 17, 15, 16, 17 age group. And then our performance is our college players and our USA Basketball U16 elite players. So based on our 4 levels, we feel very strongly that as we progress in those levels, we want the skill level to remain, but also now we are really doing a great job of teaching just how to play the game. And so it gets a little more difficult as, I shouldn't say difficult, but it gets a little more intense as a coach because we have to let go of some of the things that we've always thought was really important. In other words, for an advanced player, spending an hour and 20 minutes to an hour and a half in practice all on skills is really not accomplishing what we want to accomplish as a coach. We want to put those skills into action. I will say this from our standpoint too. I think our kids, we play a lot of international basketball, obviously, in FIBA. And one of the things how our kids learn to play the game is on the playgrounds. We have a lot of playgrounds. We have a lot of parks where they go and play, hey, let's get a game going, a 4-on-4 or 5-on-5, 3-on-3 work. And they just learn, they figure things out about spacing. They figure things out about how to move without the basketball. And so rather than having to be coached all the time, I think this has really probably been a mainstay of really developing our players in the United States is really playing on the playgrounds. And we find out now that's not quite as much as it used to be 10, 15 years ago. We used to go to New York and West 4th Street. Some of you people have been to New York, you go to Rucker Park or West 4th Street. That's where games were really being held. Not so much anymore. So we're kind of getting away from that as well. So as opposed to having the structure of the skills and then putting that into play. We have the 8 skills we talked about last time. 4 of those you mentioned, Sergio. We've added screening to ours, rebounding, and the whole offense and whole defense. So we think these 8 skills are really important to teach the game of basketball. But like we're talking about here, when do you implement those into your practice sessions? Well, if you're teaching 12, 13, 14-year-olds, and older, you want to make sure that their skills are to the level that they can accomplish what they need to accomplish. In other words, let me pull another screen up here, and am I sharing this, Sergio? Okay. So what we think is really, really important is that we will start out. We do a lot of 3-on-0, 3-on-3 work in practice at all levels. And what we do, what we do is we try to teach them, this is the action that we're playing with. And now how do we impose this action? How do we progress with this action? How do we make the players understand that this action is what we're looking for, but the concept is still there depending on what the defense does. So I'll just take the first one. This is just a baseline drift, baseline drive. So we set up in 3-on-0 work, very much like we talked about earlier. We're teaching a concept. So if the player dribbles hard to the baseline, what is our concept that we're going to have the other players know? Well, we want a baseline drift pass. We want somebody to go to the baseline. So we have this pass option available. We'd like to have our player go right to the middle of the court, because now on a baseline drive, we think there's two basic areas here and here that we can make the pass to. So without actually telling the player, all right, you're going to make this drive and make this pass to the baseline, we may break that down in a drill, but now when we go to a 3-on-0 and then 3-on-3, they're going to have to figure out which one of these is available, where they're going to go with that. So as a coach, now we're giving them some ideas about how to make this concept work on baseline drives. Middle drive is the same way. Here comes a middle drive. We call this looping. We loop underneath the basket to get open, because who's going to stop this guy from driving? Well, this guy's going to be in a position to stop him. And now we loop him across. He's going to be wide open for a shot. And then we fill behind. We replace and fill behind. Those of you that have watched the NCAA tournament the last couple of years, Villanova won on a last-second shot with the same exact play, where the player penetrated, he kicked back, he hits a game winner from right here. So again, it wasn't a called set. It wasn't a called play. It was a concept that they work on continually, that Villanova works on continually in practice, that got that open shot. These are two examples, and you can really make up any type of for a better word, I call them sets, but I don't really like to call them sets, because I want the players to play out of, I don't want them to run a set. I want them to play out of a set, if that makes sense. I don't want them to think, all right, if I'm going to dribble penetrate here to the middle, my only option here is pass back. You may have a good shot right there. You may have a drop off pass, or you may have a pass back. So we're giving the players, and then as a coach, when you coach this kind of action, you are letting them figure out what is the best in a 3-on-3 setting. So we have the same thing for high pick and roll. We run a lot of high pick and rolls with our team. Now we have a high pick and roll. We're coming off that pick and roll. We lift on the backside. We roll the basket. Now we got to make decisions. Hook pass right here. Pocket pass right here. Again, those are skills, hook pass, pocket pass, that we may say, you know what, we're not very good at those skills, so we're going to have to practice those maybe after this high pick and roll. We say, all right, guys, we're going to set up a drill where we're going to practice this hook pass over here. So we're taking what we have in a coaching setting, and now we're going to go back and drill it, as opposed to just drilling it for no reason. Pick and roll, the slot cut, same thing here. The slot cut right here, this prevents the nail defender from stunning. So we're coming off a screen and a slot screen right here. We got several options. And again, option might be to shoot it right there. So we have three different kind of things that we're looking at as a player. And I go back to the fact that when our players come in to us, this is what we really give them, so they can play out of these sets, not play exactly on the sets. Would I do this with some 7-year-olds? No, I would not do this with 7-year-olds. Would I do it with 12, 13, 14? Absolutely. I would maybe make it a simple one. I'd maybe make just these two to start with 13, 14-year-olds, and then maybe build up to it. All right, we do some high pick and rolls. Now we have a slot cut right here. We have the wave action here, where now it's a little bit higher level, so we're almost into our advanced level now, where we're going to wave this guy through, dribble handoff right here as well. So maybe we pass back to the coach, and then we come through with this. And so we're getting a lot of action off of this, and then we're making reads to it. Catch and shoot again right here. Now we're working on a pin down. coming off that pin down, whether he does a curl cut, wing cut, whatever, slip the screen, looking for those situations. And then it's very important after pass. What do we do with it? We spread out. Sergio talked about spacing. Spacing really is an offense. So now players are learning, all right, I just can't make a pass and stand. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to space out. And you can put in, here's a baseline cross screen that we can put in too, where we're starting with the cross screen. So we put this into, and I know my time's about running out here, Sergio, but we put this into a situation where it's a 3-on-3 situation. And let me pull that up here. So now we put this in a 3-on-3 situation where now we're making the same exact concepts. And now we have to, from what the defense does, allows the offense to go ahead and read that. But it also puts a little bit of all right, how's the defense going to cover this? So it's both an offensive and a defensive type of situation with all these. And now we're learning how to play the game from this. And now we can build up to 4-on-4 with the same thing here, same situations, baseline drive, baseline drift, spacing type things. And then we can obviously build it into a 5-on-5 situation. So that's really our perception on how to develop concepts with younger players, 12, 13, 14. And as they get older, we add more stuff to it and for them to, in order for them to kind of figure it out. Because now we throw a high pick and roll in there. And a player might ask me, well, what's going to be open on this? Well, as a coach, you can't tell him what's going to be open. They have to look at it and figure out what's going to be open. It might be a pocket pass right here to the guy rolling. It might be an open jump shot. Depends if they get over the top or not. This guy may sag in and help. It might be a hook pass right here for an open jump shot. So now we get the whole concept of how we're going to attack the type of defense that is on the court. Sergio, I'll open it up now for any comments or questions that
Perfect. Don, that was fantastic. Really, I think it set us up really nicely. Look, I think before I open to the rest of the guys in the audience, okay, just a reflection really based on what I've said and what you've said. Am I right thinking that because you mentioned you don't want players to play a set, but you want them to play out of a set. You want them. The way I've normally and the way I explain that to my players is, look, all I'm doing here is trying to create an initial framework to put you in an advantageous situation, but after that you're on your own. Yep. And you have to make decisions based on the principles of, am I in the right space? Am I reacting to the ball movement? Am I is that what you meant really, that we just create that initial position, really? Yeah
And I think you raise a great point, because as a coach, sometimes it's hard to let them figure it out on the court. We always want to jump in and say, no, this is where you should have made the play. I think we can do that, but I think we need to let them play through things in order for them to really understand what's going on. I'll give you a great example. I have 5 grandboys, and they're all basketball players, but the oldest one's 14, and then it goes down to 6. Anyway, they were playing a 3-on-3 league. My 10-year-old, 11-year-old, and they were playing out here, and they weren't coached. They were playing it, and the ball goes from here. He was at the wing. He makes a cut to the basket and gets a pass and scores a layup. And here's a 9-10-year-old understanding that, hey, if I make that backdoor cut, I might get the basketball. So I asked him after the game, I said, how did you know to do that? He goes, well, he said, nobody really told me. He said, but if the defender won't let me catch the pass here, I'm going to cut back door and get the ball. So that's a great example of letting the kids figure out how to do things, as opposed to coaches overcoaching and telling them what to do all the time.
But I think you mentioned something there that to me is really important. They did that in a 3-on-3 situation. The league they were playing was a 3-on-3.
Yep.
But too many times we see those 9-year-olds playing 5-on-5. And then that's a lot harder because the space is limited and everybody wants the ball and they bunch up. So it's not only the way we coach them, but the formats of the game that we allow them to play. And that's kind of a battle, really. I mean, if I had my way, we'd be playing 4-on-4 until under 16s, really, yep. to really open up the court and provide that space. Yep. But yeah, that's always important. Okay. All right. So I think we've done a really good job in terms of setting up the scene. And look, we've got a small group of basketball coaches here. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to break protocol. Okay. And I'm going to ask you all to turn your cameras and microphones on and let's have a chat. Okay. I will try and manage that as best as I can. But if you're able to, if you can open your cameras and microphones, please. And let's see everybody. Brilliant. Great to see you all, guys. And thank you for making time tonight. All right. So, okay. I know we've got some, I'm going to start with the questions that we've got on the chat, okay, to get us going. And then what we'll do is, if you, I see most of you, some of you are still with your cameras off, but if you want, as we progress through the rest of the session, just put your hand up and I'll let you ask your question, okay? All right, so one of the first questions really from Hussein was around the idea of how do we make the drills fun and enjoyable, okay? And Don, I'm going to have a go first because it's one of the things that to me is one of the best things about having a more of a games-based approach to coaching. And like I say, please, I'm not opposed to drills. If you come and see me coach, you will see me do drills and you will see me do unopposed drills and technical drills. So don't get me wrong, I'm not against drills, okay? I just think everything at the right time. For me, the idea of really starting from the game really helps with the fun element because the game is fun by itself. You don't have to make the game fun. You have to make drills fun, but you don't have to make the game fun. So when we played those two clips that I showed you with the 5v4 and the 4-on-4, I could run the same drill for the whole session and they would never tell me to switch it because they love those games because they are the essence of the game, okay? So that would be the first piece of advice from me, really, that before you go for a drill, see if you can achieve the same objectives with something that is more game-like. Like I say, it's not always possible. And again, please, by all means, everybody here invited to come to my sessions and you'll see me doing drills. But I'll always think before I end up doing what I call an analytical drill, unopposed, okay, I will always think, is there another way of doing this that is more fun or more close to the game? And if the answer is no, and sometimes the answer is no, then I'll go with a traditional drill if you want. And I see no trouble with that. So Don, any reflections on how do we make training fun from your side?
I mean, you hit it right on the head. First of all, basketball is a fun game, and sometimes I think coaches make it not fun. So I think we as coaches really need to make what we do fun. But first of all, my definition of fun, and I think we have to define what fun is. You know, to some kids, fun is pulling the guy's shorts down in front of him. That's that's not fun. That's not fun. But what's fun is doing something hard well. And I just know over the course of coaching, when you challenge kids and they figure out doing something that they're not accustomed to doing or out of their comfort zone, and they can do it, that's really fun. and what we'll do, kind of like you mentioned, Sergio, maybe we're doing a ball handling drill. We'll put a time on it. All right, how many between the legs can you do in 10 seconds? That makes it fun for them, type of thing. So, pretty much the same. I think as coaches, sometimes we take the fun out of the game.
Absolutely. We get in the way of fun really by trying to teach. You mentioned by overcoaching and under teaching really.
Yeah.
We had a question from Gary around Gary, if you want to, I don't know, Gary is the odd one out. Okay. Gary's a football coach. Okay. But he's one of my colleagues at iCoachKids. Okay. But Gary had a really good question around the playgrounds. So Gary, if you don't mind, just open your mic and ask the question.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So my expertise is in football, but I know we have similar problems. I'm interested, Don, in hearing it from a basketball perspective. You speak about the importance in the playgrounds, and that seems to have decreased over the last 10, 15 years because the world has changed. I wonder if you think that can be recreated or simulated in training.
Yeah, I mean, I think when Sergio says you're involved with the football, I assume that's soccer. We call it as for
Yeah.
soccer. Yeah. But you know, we learn. I learned a lot from our soccer coaches. I mean, I think we learn a lot from each other. How to conduct a practice. How to put how to progress in your drills and those things. So I think soccer's done a great job from our standpoint of making the game similar to what we do in basketball. I think whenever we get, and I find this out with whenever players come in and you're there as a coach, they're always looking for something for the coach to give them or the coach to tell them, as opposed to, hey, can we organize ourselves into games? Whether I'm there or not, can we just get four guys and play 2-on-2, or 8 guys and play 4-on-4? And I think what we've tried to do more and in the basketball sense is when they come to a gym that we open up, or they're part of a gym, we try and get them in that frame of mind, and maybe not part of a practice session, but we let them kind of take over, as opposed to, all right, us saying, all right, let's have you 4 against you 4, whatever. Let them take over role of it. And I think that's really what they are missing from not having the playground aspect of it. And we see it coming back, and it varies in different parts of the country, obviously, but some of the really great players, the Kyrie Irvings and the Kevin Durant's of our game, really learned how to play the game on the playgrounds. And so I think, and that comes from the coach allowing them to play the game. So I think when we know that, it's better that we let them kind of take over and organize things. If that makes sense.
Thanks, Don.
Excellent. The next question really, Aaron asked a question earlier on around what percentage of time we spend on teaching skills versus games-based practice. And Don, I think the question was originally meant for me, but I'm going to bounce it back to you before I give the answer. Don, in terms of splitting your practices, I mean, do you have a regular split that you would say, well, I do 40% drills, 60% games, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we go a third of the time is spent in drills, a third of the time is spent with whole offense, we call it, and a third of the time is spent in whole defense. Now, that whole offense can be 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5. The drills can be obviously might be a defensive skill that we're working on. So might be a 3-on-2, 2-on-1 type of thing. It might be. I really feel it's important to get players ready to practice from a mental standpoint. What drills do you do to get them ready from a mental standpoint? So that would include that, but it's about a third. So if we have an hour practice, it'd be 20, 20, 20 with each of those. Now, it may not be, you come to our practice or my practice, you may see me starting out with something on whole offense or whole defense. And then we break that down. All right, hey, we need to work on our push passing because we're not passing the ball very well from our point to the wing. So we would do a push pass drill. So and then come back to the whole offense. So it's not a designated. This 20 minutes is only for the drill session. This 20 minutes is only for the whole offense or whole defense. It's kind of combined with each other. So that's how we personally break it down.
Thanks, Don. I mean, for me, it's been a bit of an evolution and a bit of a trial and error over the years, really. And where I am at the moment is I've kind of gone, rather than trying to do everything every day in terms of doing skills every day and then game every day, I go more through phases where I might have 3 or 4 sessions where we mostly play, okay, and then on the back of that we might go to another couple of sessions where we, based on what happened in those 4 weeks or 4 sessions of mostly playing, we might develop some technical sessions, really, or some more 50% technical, 50% games, and we just kind of play by ear, really, and I think that's after 20 odd years of trying different things, that's where I'm most comfortable at the moment in terms of like I say, I try to play a lot, okay, and it's not just 5-on-5, obviously. It's all kinds of from 1-to-1 to 2v1 to 5-on-5 with conditions and all that. But it's really kind of having those blocks where there's a lot of playing, and then we maybe go back to a little bit of more technical stuff. And then there'll be sessions that look exactly what you said, where there'll be 30 minutes of skills and then 30 minutes of offense and 30 minutes of defense, really. But I think I'm moving more towards that idea of blocks of 4, 5, 6 sessions where we mostly play on the different conditions, to then evaluate where we are and decide if we can carry on playing or if we need to build up some skills, or if we have to develop some personal plans for each player, because like you said, he can push pass and he can shoot and just do it that way. But there's no set rule for me at the moment. It's very fluid, really, in that sense.
I think just a comment. As a young, I coached over 40 years at the high school level here in the States, and as a young coach, I spent way too much time just on all drills. Mm-hmm. And as I got more comfortable with coaching, I mixed those into allowing the actual play time. So and some practices, like you said, Sergio, we might spend 60 minutes on, hey, we need to get better at this skill, because our game we may spend 15, 20 minutes on rebounding someday because our rebounding is terrible, type thing. So yeah, I definitely agree with what you said.
Great. All right, guys, over to you. Any other questions? Come on, don't be shy. I know you all, or most of you, so I know what you're like. Alan, you got a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks very much for this, guys. It's very informative, and I appreciate your time this evening. It's really interesting to listen to. Don, can I ask you a question about the Team USA Under-17 that you've been involved with for a long time?
Sure.
So in terms of like that roster you bring in, or that team that you work with, how do you balance, or do you feel you have to balance between winning with that team and development with that team?
Well, that's a great question, because the development with those players, the development is so they can advance and play at the NBA. I mean, that's what they want. So what can we give them to advance their skill level and their basketball level so they can be functional in the NBA? That starts with, a lot of it starts with terminology. Our terminology has to be exact. It has to, when we talk about dribble handoffs, DHOs, they have to know so we really try and spend a lot of time with it. Here's what we talk about as far as terminology. How do we defend screens? Those kind of things, black or red, whatever our terminology is. So I think it starts with that. So yeah, I mean, our goal is to win gold medals. There's no question about that. And hopefully in that process, We have 4 training camps a year where those kids come, and we're with those players for about 3 days for 4 different times during the year. So only one of those times would be a training camp where we're picking teams. The other 3 times are where we're in development stages, and we have a whole handbook, a guide that we go through, that we pretty structured in how we teach 4-on-4 shell drill, what our terminology is on that. So I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Thank you
really
for that.
Great question.
That's, I mean, before we go to the next question, I know Guillermo has raised his hand. That I mean, you just mentioned the idea of starting with terminology, and as simple as it is
yeah,
bloody hell, that's a great answer. You know, just really get everybody on the same page to start with, really to give them a good start in what's next for them. Really, what kind of terminology do they have to get used to be able to function, just to function cognitively, really, in the NBA. Excellent. Guillermo, I'm going to go over to you for the next one.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks both of you for this. Really great. So my question was actually for both of you, because you both mentioned something right now along the lines of, you know, if you see that you had a bad game, or you're executing a specific skill poorly. So my question is, do you switch your planning based on what happens in one game or in 2 or 3 games? Or do you mostly stick to your planning and, you know, just trust in the long term? Or do you have like a mix and match of both?
Don, you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
That's a great question, Guille. I try to do as little firefighting as possible. Okay. And that's where, again, the idea of the principles of the game really helps me. I used to firefight a lot back in the day. Okay. But now, actually, when I'm watching my own games, okay, or even when I'm watching my players play in sessions, what I'm looking for is, okay, what principles of the game really do I want them to be working on right now at this stage of their development? What am I really, what do I really care about? Okay. And then I tailor the future sessions based on those principles, as opposed to, we are not, we don't run the out of bounds plays really well, or our help side is not great. I mean, if at that moment I'm not, if at a particular moment, like for example, the last 2 years, with a group that has been really successful, became national champions 1 year, and this year, before COVID, we were undefeated, and playing really well. I didn't do any help side drills pretty much the whole season. Everything they learned about help side was through play. Okay. So there were games where our help side wasn't great, but that wasn't my focus really this year, because I had particularly this year, because I had a really new group, that a lot of them were new to the club, new to myself, and relatively new to the game. My focus was on getting them on the same page offensively, and really understanding those basic principles of the game that a 13-year-old should know. Okay. And help side defense, although important, for me wasn't a priority this year. Okay. And there might have been games where, and we went undefeated. Okay. But there were games that we won by the skin of our teeth. Okay. And maybe our help side defense was terrible. But when we came back to training, I didn't focus 2 weeks on help side defense, because my priority was still the other stuff. We might have built some hidden curriculum around help side defense on some of the games. Okay. But yeah, I try to firefight as little as possible, and keep a long-term view. Not always easy, okay, because you're still always trying to keep that balance between winning and teaching and developing. And but I've gone away from firefighting, which I did a lot, 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I did a lot of firefighting. Don, how does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, you made some really good points there. I would say that as you were talking, a lot of thoughts were going through my head as well. But basically, what we like to do, I mean, if there are only so many, I think you need to find out what your team does well, and then emphasize that. In other words, you know, your team can't do 10 things well. I don't care what level you're coaching. I think they can do 3 things really well. And so I think, you know, it's not that you don't teach the rest of it, but your emphasis is, hey, what can we do really well? And so we emphasize maybe 3 things. We call them non-negotiables. What are my non-negotiables for this team? And it might be running the court on a fast break with our wings getting to the corner. That might be a non-negotiable. It might be offensive rebounding. You know, so I pick out for our teams. I always pick out 3 things that I think that we really emphasize, and our teams can come back and regurgitate those 3 things. Hey, this is what's really important to coach. And it might be help side defense. It might be on ball defense is really, really important to us. So from your team, I think you need to kind of figure out they're not going to be good at 10 things as a team. They're going to be good at 3 things. And then that's the kind of the emphasis that you put in. And your team will be, I think they'll be good at what you emphasize. You know, if we emphasize a fast break, I think they'll really be good at it. If we emphasize full court defense, I think they can be really good at it. I don't think they can be good at full court defense, half court defense, playing 2-3 zone, playing a matchup. I don't think they can be good at all of them. So I don't know if that helps you out, but I think it's important for us as a coach, and that's what coaching is, figure out what your team can be good at and then really emphasize that.
Thanks, Don. And Guille, I wanted to make another observation there, really. I'm very conscious that, because I've coached now 20 plus years, okay, in quite a few different contexts, okay? And I think where I am now is what's most effective for my players within my context. And my context at the moment is that these players train 3 times a week, okay, and then play 1 game at the weekend. But I've been in context before where when I was coaching the Mystics, when I was coaching Division 1 women's, we trained 6 times a week. So the way I went about things was slightly different because I had more time with them. And I think it's not about being a fundamentalist really in terms of this is what I think the art of coaching is, okay, with the time that I've got, the players that I've got, and my objectives for this group, what's the best way I can do this? And for example, in this current situation where I'm coaching under 14 players for the last 5 years, it's taken me 5 years to get to a point where, considering the fact that I've got only 3 times a week with them and that they are 13 and that a lot of them are late to the game, what's the best thing that I can do for them? And it would be different if I was coaching in Spain, like you are training 5 times a week with players that have been players since they were 5 years of age. I'll be probably doing something different. So I guess my point is I've had to teach myself to move away from recipes and just to really try to work out what's going to work best for this particular context. And it might take you a while. Like I said, with this particular age group now, I've been in that group of 5 years now, and it's taken me it took me 2-3 years to actually find the right measure for everything. And every year is a bit different because the children are different as well. All right. Right, Ben, there you go.
Hello. Thanks very much, guys. It's been really good so far. Very enjoyable, very insightful. I've got 2 questions, if I may, if I'm allowed to.
Of course, yeah.
hopefully they're short. The first one is, would you be happy to share a little bit of what you do actually outside of practice? Sergio, I know you do quite a lot with your guys, different tasks. I'm really interested to see what you do outside other than the sort of normal S&C type stuff. That's my first question. The second question is, how do you involve your players in the learning process? And if so, how do you go about that?
Yeah. So is that a question for both of us? Yeah.
For both. Yeah. For both. Yeah.
Done. So the two questions: what do we do outside practice, so outside of the actual on-court stuff, and how do we involve players on the learning process? And I know, I mean, at the moment you've got very different experiences. On the one hand, you've coached for 40 years in mostly in a high school system, right?
Yep.
But then you're now coaching the last 10 years. You've coached the national teams where you only see them 4 times a year, and plus the championship. So outside practice, what's been your what have you done in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of different things. I think players need to see coaches outside of your venue where you coach. I mean, I tell coaches we are different people when we coach and when we aren't. We just are. And I think players need to see us in a situation where, hey, we're human beings. We have other life. We can, you know, it's not all basketball for us, and we do that various ways. I mean, you know, we might go bowling as a team, go as a team to watch a college basketball game, invite the players over to the house for dinner. We do volunteer service together type things where we'll maybe go out and to a food bank, help out with a food bank. So really, and those things we find out are very, very important, bringing the team together and so they feel that, you know what, it's not really all about basketball. It's important. There's a lot of other important things as well. And they get to see me as a coach outside of coaching. If they only see you in the coaching realm, they probably don't have a full view of really who you are. So I think it's important for kids to see, and plus then you get to know them too. So you know, you get to know their personalities and how they're doing. So I think that's really important that you know, you spend some time with them outside of the game of basketball.
And in terms of your how do you involve players in the learning process? Really, how much I don't know how much of a is it from, I guess, Ben, where you were getting at, how much is it one-way traffic just from you, or how much is it involving them in their own learning? What's the balance there?
That's another great question. We I think I also coached high school basketball while I was coaching with USA Basketball. So I coached the team in the summertime with my own high school team. So I kind of got a different view, just the level of competition, obviously. But as I got more experience in coaching, I would ask a lot of questions in practice. So instead of telling a player, "Hey, do this," I would say maybe, you know, what would be a better way of defending a screen? So I ask a lot of questions in practice and get feedback from players that way. And I think it involves them. First of all, they're not just rote learners. It involves them in the game of basketball. It makes them think and how to answer, and so that they really listen a lot better, pay much more attention, because they know that you may ask them a question. So, for instance, we may be doing a 3-on-3 drill, and I may stop and say, "Hey Billy, what other option did you have there?" And then as they would progress in that, they would, "Oh yeah, I had the option of hitting the guy going to the middle of the lane." So that has been a big coaching point for me, and we do that with our coaches as well. Is ask a lot of questions in practice, and then just to end up on that, I think what you need to do, we call it debrief. So you're debriefing your team maybe after a drill, whatever. So you have your team, and now you're saying, "All right, how did that drill go? What could we have done better in that drill? What could we have done better in that fast break drill or whatever?" So we're kind of debriefing. We call it debrief on during a practice.
Fascinating, really, and I mean, the only thing really I'm going to add to that, really, because we always try to do some of those, the more social activities as well. We've done the volunteering, we've done backpacking in supermarkets and things like that. We've done the debriefing, and something that I've been really strong on in terms of including players in their own development. The last 5 years, really, since I started working with these new groups, in the under 14 age group, I've been doing a lot of player self-assessment. Okay. And while Don was talking, I was pulling up a couple of documents that I've used for that purpose that I'm going to share with you, if that's okay, just so you see what I mean. And before I show you the documents, really, because when you ask a player to self-assess at 12 or 13 years of age, there is a very strong chance that their self-assessment is going to be very far removed from reality. Okay, but that's okay, because I think at this point the important thing is not that they get it right, but actually that they get used to thinking about what am I like as a player. And over time, hopefully, they will build a more realistic view of themselves, really. Also, as they know more about the game, really, and as they gain more experience about the game, they'll be able to do that. But let me just share with you one document that I put together a few years ago that works really well for me. So is this, I call it the player self-scouting report. Okay. And basically I put this thing together, and I bring copies of this to the session, and we do this probably 3 or 4 times a year, really. And I will say to them, okay, so if a scout from the NBA or the NCAA or the EuroLeague or British Basketball or Basketball England came through the door now and saw you play in this session, what would they say about you in these areas? Okay, this is the red bit here. And they have to write, this is what I think they would say about me now. Okay. So that then we're trying to involve them into, develop that self-awareness, really. Okay. And then once they've done that bit, the left-hand side, then the way to involve them in their own learning is, okay, so what would you concentrate on out of these things that they said? What would you concentrate on over the next 6 weeks? What do you want to get better at over the next 6 weeks? Okay. And they will write that here. And again, sometimes what they write here is, to put it bluntly, useless. Okay. But it's just the process of going through this idea of thinking about themselves in these different areas. Okay. And over time, and honestly, I've done this with 10-year-olds. And then I was fortunate enough that I had some of these 10-year-olds be with me for 3 or 4 years. And you can see the improvement and the development of these documents over time, because they are more able, they know themselves better, they know the game better, and they've got this habit of looking at themselves in a different light. So this is one of the examples, really, and these documents, they work really well, and the players really enjoy them, and it's just like I say, it's just lighting up a flame of the flame of self-reflection, really, that works for me.
Sergio, can I ask a question on that real quick, please?
Yeah.
Questions for both of you guys again. In this process of asking players questions, like, can I ask, when you ask the player questions, like, how often do you ask the question not knowing the answer ahead of time?
Oof, I'm going to pass that on to Don. Don, how often don't you know the answer?
Well, basically what we're asking a question so we get some feedback, so they're thinking about what we've asked them. In other words, we're asking, might be something technical, an X and O thing. I just want to know what their understanding is. And I never tell them it's wrong or whatever. I just say that, that's a good point. We need to make sure we understand that. So, generally you're not going to get the answer you want as a coach, especially with 13, 14-year-olds, because they're just learning how to play the game. So when you ask them that question, they may not even know that's a main part of the game. But what you're asking a question is, so they think about that concept. Oh, I mean, this is something I should know, type of thing. And it's always, and usually what I will do is ask the questions of the players who are a little more talented, who I know will give some good feedback to it, so the rest of them can hear that. And then so a player gives me that information. when I ask him a question, then I'll say, Billy, what did he say? So now I'm going to get. So now I want to find out if Billy understood what Joe said. You know, Billy may heard him, but he didn't really listen. So now we're getting some different parts of that. So I mean, that's just kind of an ongoing thing that we do in practice. Our players are very aware that we ask a lot of questions in practice, and so they had better be, and to not say anything isn't acceptable. They have to give an answer.
Thanks for that, Don.
Alan, that's a great question, really, and again, I think I've realized over the years that when I ask questions, they tend to be quite leading. Okay, I'm not very good at asking open questions. Okay, so I've kind of being aware of my own limitations, really, in terms of asking questions. What I've done is these two things, really. I differentiate between two types of questions. Okay, if I'm asking a question because I think a player should have realized something or made a different decision based on what was on the floor, I will ask a question that I know the answer to. Okay, I still try to be open and ask the question in a way that the player may say something that I sometimes go, oh shit, I didn't think about that. Okay, but if I really want to ask a question where I don't want to be leading, and I know I just want them to really explore a topic, I won't do a question. I will ask. It will be a question, but it won't be a question that I need a quick answer. So I will stop practice, give them a piece of paper or a whiteboard or whatever, split them in groups and say, okay, explore, for example, where are we likely to get good shots in the offense? Or explore how would you defend a screen off the ball, okay? And just let them discuss it for 5 minutes, okay? Because if I know I ask questions and expect an answer on the spot there, I'm gonna end up leading them somewhere. So, like I say, I've kind of over the years decided to realize when I want an answer and I know the answer, and then I'm not kidding anybody. I know the answer I want, and when I want them to explore, I'll just do something else. I'll just really split them and give them time to think about it and elaborate on it, or have a timeout. They don't even have to give me the answer back. Just a timeout between you in small groups, and then let's go back and play again, and then let's think about what you talked in the timeout. But I'm terrible at asking questions in that way, and it's taken me years to realize that, or to accept that those are the questions that I'm asking. So if I want an answer, then I'll ask the question. If I want them to explore, I'll do something else.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for that, Sergio. Brilliant.
Okay, how are we doing for time? All right, we're slightly over time. So Don, I don't want to keep you too long because I know you are on a vacation. One last question, guys. Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, just following on from that point there, asking questions and looking for the answer. We sometimes fall in danger of having kids repeat what we exactly said, what we said to them, what we taught them in our own language. So I think just the point I'd like to make is the word elaborate that you use there. So ask them to explore or elaborate what they spoke, what they had said, gets them to think a little bit more about the question that you would ask them. So it's more of a question, it's more of a point really than a question. Sorry.
Yeah, no, very true.
Great point. Yeah, great point.
Very true. One last question before I let Don get back to his vacation.
I'm good.
Don, there was one question before. Sorry, Gary, go ahead.
Sorry,
The soccer guy.
Question, but I think I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'm sure that someone will have watched one sports team over the course of this lockdown.
Gary, sorry, we lost you there for a minute. Gary, we lost your connection there for a second. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, can you hear me?
You're coming on in and out.
How about now?
That's okay.
Okay, so I'm sure I've watched fly on the wall documentaries of sports teams over the course of the lockdown. I wonder if there was a fly on the tree for each of you, what would you look like at your best on the court?
Over to you, Don. If we had a fly on the wall documentary of your coaching, what would you look like?
Well, I mean, and I think that's a great question, because I think we need to, as coaches, we need to evaluate ourselves and see how we can become a better coach. And you know, we do that film watch. I would, first of all, I would think, I think I'm very demanding on the court, but I really try and not be demeaning. What I mean by that is, you know, we can be, I think players want us to be demanding in their skills, and they want to get better. I don't know very many players who are playing the game that don't want to get better. So I think they want you to be a demanding coach that's going to do things, that wants them to do things the right way without being demeaning, you know, putting them down or whatever. I think once you establish that trust that you're going to be demanding without being demeaning, then I think that has a long way to go toward their first of all, their respect of you as a coach, and also how much they improve. So I think I'm really demanding in practice, but I do it without being demeaning, and I'm very aware of that. The other thing, then, I think I really try and work on having a great flow to our practice. I don't want the practice to stop and start. I want a great flow to it. So very conscious of not having a lot of stops and starts. I mean, the stops and starts we have are very well placed, and so the flow of practice, I think, is much better, more game-like, more teachable. You know, learn to teach while a drill's going on. Learn to teach while the activity's going on. I think is really important. So those are two things I think would come through if you would see our practice.
That's such a great question, Gary. And Don, that was such a good answer, really. And I'm thinking, if you came, you know, if you put a hidden camera in my session, what would you see, right? And I think it would vary slightly from day to day, right? But I hope that you would see someone that, again, over time, over the years, has become more comfortable with trying to really focus on creating the right environment and set up the right activities. So I actually have to do as little coaching as possible as things are happening, that the environment that I've created and the activities that I run do most of the coaching without, like Don said, without me having to stop it too much, passing on a lot of responsibility to the kids. Okay. And that's my own perception of what I try to do. Okay. And I think I'm not always, I mean, you said on your best day. Okay. On my best day, that's what I really hope to see. Someone that is planned a session that is doing a lot of the coaching without you having to explicitly do it yourself, and where the players are fully engaged and driving the learning themselves. And like I said, I don't get there every night, and I always joke that as soon as I walk through the door, my wife knows what kind of session I had. She is straight away, she can look at me and go, "Ooh, that wasn't a good session, was it?" Because I'm very demanding on myself, like Don said, I'm very demanding on my players, but I'm even more demanding on myself. And I will kick myself a million times if I didn't get it right on a session or in a game. Yeah. Great question, Harry.
Yeah, if I could add one thing to that, I think for the most part, players don't have bad practices. Coaches do. And so if you as a coach don't come to practice with the proper enthusiasm and passion for what you're going to do, I think it's going to be hard to get that out of the players. So I really, in my estimation, my assistant coach would say, "Boy, that was kind of a crummy practice," I'd go, "Whoa, we need to look at ourselves in the mirror as opposed to the players." So I really do feel that way, that players don't really have, obviously there's going to be some happen during the day, but really they don't have bad practices, but coaches do if we're not bringing it every day.
Thank you. All right, guys. Honestly, I could talk to Don all night, and to you guys. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Don, thanks a million for making time for us. It is
awesome.
so important, really. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.